All right, we're going to review for your transformation of trig graphs and solving trig equations. I'm going to skip around a little bit. I'm going to actually start with number 2. So the first step you want to do is you want to graph your original sine graph. So that's what it normally looks like. And then we do our steps. So step number 1, it tells you a negative, there's like a little -1 there. You're going to flip it. So your new amplitudes would be 0, -1, 0, 1, and 0. Okay. Step 2 is here. You're going to go up 2. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and use a few marks here and label them so that when I get ready to name my points, I'm good to go. And I want to go up 2. So my new axis is here. Right. Then I'm going to take a look at this because I have to decide what my marks are. Remember, your total is normally 2 pi, and you're going to take this number, which is 3, and divide. So 2 pi divided by 3. It doesn't reduce. So that's your total entire period. You're going to go from 0 to 2 pi. 2 pi over 3. Right, now for your parts, you take that number, remember, and your 4 parts. So you take 2 pi over 3 times 1/4. You multiply straight across, so 2 pi times 1 is 2 pi. 3 times 4 is 12. Then you reduce, which is pi over 6. So each part is pi over 6. So your markings would be pi over 6, 2 pi out of 6, 3 pi out of 6, and 4 pi out of 6. And you can check and be sure if you're right, because 4 pi out of 6 is the last stop, which reduces to 2 pi over 3. So you're good. If you think about your markings here, okay, 2 pi out of 3, if you look on your unit circle, it's going to be kind of about here. It doesn't really matter. You know, it just, as long as you know it's shrunk. Okay, so here's your 4 marks. If you want to label them, you can. You don't have to. I'll just label a couple here. Then you use this to decide your amplitude in each spot. Okay, so this is your new starting place. So 0 is 0. Your amplitude now is -1, so that's taken care of. So you're going to drop down 1, so at the next stop you're here. Back to 0 at your next stop. Then up 1, which will put you at 3. And then back to 0. So here's your new graph. It shrunk, right, and flipped. If you want to name some points, your lowest point here would be over pi over 6 down -1, so that's 1 point. Your tallest point is here, okay, which is this mark, pi over 2, 3. Now then, let's move to number 3. Let's graph cosine. Your original cosine graph then you just do the steps it tells you. Step 1 is your amplitude. So your new amplitude would be, you multiply these by 3, each of them. So 3, 0, -3, 0, 3. Step 2, you're going to move it up 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and label these so it's easier. I'm going to move it up 1. So instead of being at 0, I'm now going to be at 1. Now, I have my amplitude is step 3, and if you'll notice, it's a fraction. Some of you had trouble with that, so normally it's 2 pi, or 2 pi over 1, right? Well, let's just leave it at 2 pi right now, hang on. Okay, so it's normally 2 pi, and you divide by whatever number's here, which means you're going to divide by 1/3. When you divide by a fraction, I'm going to take 2 pi then and put it over 1. I'm just going to flip this, remember? So I put 2 pi over 1, I flipped my denominator, and so you end up with 6 pi over 1, which is just 6 pi. So that's your total now. Guys, that means you stretched it really far, because usually we just go to 2 pi, right? So we're going to go all the way to 6 pi. It doesn't really matter, but it would be way over here. You can make your marks. This would be all the way to 6 pi. So now we need our parts. And our parts are decided by taking your total and multiplying by what? Do you remember? by 1/4, right? We're putting it in fourths. So 6 pi over 1 times 1 over 4, which is 6 pi over 4, which reduces to 3 pi over 2. This part is tricky because the parts are kind of hard to count by. Every part is 3 pi over 2. So you would say, okay, 3 pi over 2, and then you double that, which would be 6 pi's, right, over 2. You're counting by 3 pi, right? So you added 3 pi. Now you're going to add 3 more pi, which would be 9 pi over 2. And then add 3 more, which would be 12 pi over 2, which should match your original total. And 12 pi over 2 is 6 pi. So there's your parts. Now let's go back and graph. Okay, the first stop is up 3. So this is where I normally would have started now because I have a new start. So I'm going to go up 3 from here. 1, 2, 3, which actually puts me at 4. So my next stop, which is 0. My next stop is down 3. Well, there's 1, 2, and there's no mark here. So let's try again. 1, 2, 3, down, way down here at -2. Back to 0. And then the last one up, not up 2, 3, but up 3, which puts me up at 4. So it's stretched. It's huge, isn't it? Okay, to label a point, I'm just going to label this bottom point, which meant I went over. This is 3 pi over 2, right? The next one is pi over 3. It reduces to pi over 3. So this will be pi over 3, -2. Right? This one goes with this spot. This one goes with this one. 6 pi over 2 reduces to pi over 3. No, I'm sorry, to 3 pi. I said that wrong. I apologize. 6 pi divided by 2 reduces to 3 pi. I'm sorry. Okay. So 3 pi, -2. And you only have to label one point. Alright, I hope you're getting better at graphing. I'm only going to graph one more. Alright, and it's number 6. The original graph is sine. Step 1 is your amplitude. Your new amplitude would be here. Step 2 is up and down. There is no up and down, so we're just going to leave our regular axis. And then step 3 is your period. Well, my total period normally is 2 pi. I'm going to divide by pi over 4. Another tricky one, remember? So we're going to take 2 pi over 1 and flip that. Remember when you divide by a fraction, you flip it. The pi's cancel and you end up with 8. So your total is 8. Okay, our total is 8. Now, if you think about this, this is about 3. Remember, this is about 6. So our new total, and I'm going to use a different color here just to help us out. Our new total goes down to 8. And if you would like to erase the other hash marks to make it easier, you can. So you need 2, 4, 6, 8. And I already gave you the parts. I'm sorry. To find the part, remember, you take 8 times 1/4, which would be 8 over 4, which is 2. So 2, 4, 6, and 8 are each of my parts. I'm going to erase everything else that's here in pencil. Then I just use these marks with this. So 0, down 2, 0, up 2, 0, down 2, 0, up 2, 0. So this point is over 2, down 2. Over 2, down 2. So 2, -2. This point here would be over 6, up 2. Either point would be a good answer. Right, remember on the board I'd asked you on 10 through 14 to put it in radians. So be sure your calculator's in radians. Okay. And I'm just gonna work a few of these. This one can be kind of tricky mathematically because you'll notice like on 13 this says 5 times cosine, and on 11 this says 6 times sine. But on 10 it doesn't. This is 2 minus. So you have to move the 9 over. And you get 2 minus secant of x equals negative 8. Then you have to move the 2 over. So you get negative secant of x equals negative 10. Right, so if negative secant is negative 10, then you divide everything by negative 1, so secant is 10. Remember, secant's not on our calculator, so we change secant to cosine. So we say cosine of x equals, and we flip this 1/10. It's the only time we flip it. All right, I'm going to continue up here. So in our calculator, to free x, or to solve for x, we find the inverse. In other words, we're going to switch the x and the y's, right? And you type this in your calculator, and you get 1.47. So x equals 1.47. If you take a look at your picture, this tells you where to draw your picture. It says cosine is positive. X is positive here and here. So this is 1.47. To find your other picture, you start here and you're going to travel all the way to the other angle. Right? I know if I traveled all the way around, I would be at 6.28. And I know this shaded is 1.47, so I'm going to back up. So this would be 6.28 minus 1.47. So my other answer is 4.81. Okay, let's look at number 11. On 11, you want to solve for x, so divide both sides by 6. Okay, now then to free x, you're going to take the inverse. Notice I didn't flip it. You only flip it when you switch from secant to cosine or things like that, cotangent to tangent. When you type this in your calculator, think about your picture. Sine is negative. When is y negative? Here's your y-axis. Y is negative down here, these two spots. And when you enter this in your calculator, you actually get a negative 0.17, which you are not allowed to leave negatives. It wants your answer to be between 0 and 2 pi, so positive. Okay. So therefore, when I find this, I'm going to travel here, and I'm going to go to this spot. Well, I know that this is 3.14 because we're in radians. So I want 3.14 plus the shaded region more, so plus 0.17, right? Which gives me 3.31. To find the other answer, okay, I'm going to travel from the start all the way to here. Well, I know if I went all the way and closed the circle, I'd be at 6.28. Then I got to back up a little. So this is 6.28. And I'm going to back up the shaded region. The shaded region is 0.17. So minus 0.17. Which gives you your other answer, 6.11. Those are your two answers. Number 12. On 12, you're going to solve for tangent. So you're going to subtract the 1 first. So tangent of x over 2 equals 1. Then you're going to multiply both sides by 2. Right? So then you'll have tangent of x equals 2. Inverse tangent. Your picture. Tangent is positive. Tangent is the one where it looks like the straight line. Tangent is positive in quadrants 1 and 4. So my angle mark is here and here. When you type this inverse tangent in your calculator, you get 1.11, which is one of your answers. To find the other one, we're going to travel from here to this line. I know from here to here is 3.14. I'm going to take the shaded region more. So that would be 3.14 plus the shaded region, which gives you an answer of 4.25. right? Okay, let's move on to this page. Why don't we look at 16? On 16, you're going to, first of all, change your calculator to degrees. That's what the directions we talked about in class were. Divide both sides by 3. And when you type this in your calculator, when you find the inverse cosine of -4/3, you get an error, which means the answer is no solution. Makes sense because you can't, guys, think about cosine. The farthest you can go on each side is 1 and -1, and this is -1.3. So you can't go that far. Alright, I'm going to work one more, and then we're going to do these two real quick. So on 18, you're going to add 6 to both sides first. Then divide by 3. Okay, this is secant. The reciprocal of secant is cosine. And I'm going to flip it. It's the only time you flip it, remember? Now, in my calculator, I want the inverse of cosine. My picture then for that would be, when is cosine positive? Here's your x-axis. It's positive here and here. Your markings will be this one and this one. We're in degrees now, so when you type this into degrees, you get 64.62 degrees. Don't forget your degree mark. Now this time you're going to use 180 and 360 instead of 3.14 and 6.28. So you're going to go from here to here. If I close the gap, I'd be at 360. So on 360, I'm going to back up 64.62. So my two answers are 64.62 degrees and 295.38 degrees. All right, let's answer these questions really quick. Look at number 19. Describe the transformations. Okay, the negative means you're going to flip over the x-axis, right? The 2 means you're going to change the amplitude. So you're going to take a horizontal stretch. Right, you're stretching it up and down. 1/2, it's a fraction, right? So 1/2 doesn't shrink it, it stretches it. A fraction stretches. A stretch, but this time it's not. Oh, I apologize, guys, I made a mistake. This -2, it stretches it up and down. Up and down is a vertical. I apologize for that. This 2 right here, okay, is the amplitude, which stretches it this way, right? That is a vertical stretch. This messes with the x, which changes this direction, right? And a fraction actually makes it really big, so it's a stretch. But this time, it's a horizontal. And then the 4 means you're going to go up 4. Sorry about that. This is a vertical change. This is a horizontal change. The period on number 20. Okay, the period is what this messes with, right? Step 3. Normally our total period is 2 pi, and you take this and you divide by 2 pi. You divide by whatever is here. So 2 pi divided by 2 pi means my new period is 1. And lastly, number 21, what's the amplitude? The amplitude is decided by this number here. Step 1. I realize there's a negative here, so kids want to write -5, but it's not true. The amplitude's actually just 5. Okay? You're going to stretch it. The negative flips it, and the 5 is the new amplitude. Remember, the amplitude decides, if this is your picture, you know, how high you go and how low you go. Well, instead of going up and down 1, you're going to go up and down 5, so your amplitude is 5. Alright, I hope it's helped. Be sure to finish the other problems if you can as well. They're good for your practice.